Hello, hello. We are here. Tell us what we're here to do.
Hey, Brett. Hey, everyone. Tactic 8, standing out from the competition. We're going to talk all about seller staging strategies.
Yeah. Well, last week we talked about seller pricing strategies, and these really kind of work hand in hand, and we'll tie that up in a little bit. But here's the deal about staging: is opportunity is missed by most people because it's dressed in overalls and looks like work. Laziness keeps people from staging houses. And in a shifting market, which is what we're talking about, staging has everything to do with positioning a house for this thing we call this window of opportunity. And talk me through that.
Yeah, so I mean, we have this sort of first impression opportunity, right? And so we're living a world today of whether it's HGTV, Bravo, you name it, but people are in a voyeur society. They love looking at homes. Real estate is really exciting. And a beautiful home is what, the start to finish of those projects is what captures people's attention. Not everyone has imagination to walk into a vacant home, to imagine their furniture, their fixtures, where things would be placed. And so that's where staging comes in, right? So as we're thinking about this market, and I know we've said it before, but we have to be priced correctly. And then we have to also look and smell amazing, or we're not going to get that engaged opportunity.
I like to think it's like the curtain opens on a Broadway play and it's showtime. And when you put that listing in the MLS, and it's not just the MLS these days, it goes on thousands of aggregator websites, and anybody in the world can take a look at that listing as soon as you put it out there. And it's a one-shot first impression, right? Making sure it looks good to everybody going through. So let's talk about this. You've got a formula that you really coach and train around that comes out of the book called the 3P 2F formula. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it's really just imagining if we're talking about the 3 Ps and the 2 Fs, imagining the way a buyer walks through a property. So it's from the very front of the property. So the planting. So the first P would be plantings. So what does that landscaping look like? What is that curb appeal? The curb appeal is super important. And often we're forgetting that curb appeal, but that's the first impression from the exterior of a property. Second P is paint. Do we need a refresh? Is the paint good? Is it an offensive color? Is it a wild screaming color? Like, do we need to neutralize the paint? So the second P would be paint. The third P would be pictures. And when we mean pictures, it is photography in the property. Like, do we need to declutter and depersonalize those photos? But I would take that picture to a step further, and I would say your photography is critically important. So we'll circle back to that one. When it comes to F's, the first one is fixtures. So when we're looking at a property, there's some simple changes that can happen. Might be upgrading a light fixture, upgrading a ceiling fan or removal of one. Could be the bathroom faucets. It's the simple things that make a really big difference, those details that make the difference. And then finally, furnishings. That would be our last F. So when walking through a property, do we need to upgrade the furnishings? And it doesn't necessarily mean, well, it could mean we're moving them around, right? Could mean we're moving furnishings from one section to another. Could mean we're replacing them. Maybe we're blocking the free flow of, the natural traffic patterns through a door. But it also might mean a stager brings in a full truckload of new furnishings for the property so that it looks just like a model home, because that's what a buyer buys. A buyer buys that with their eyes and their emotions first.
Love it. This is such a simple formula, and I would be encouraging everybody to incorporate this into their listing presentation, their marketing plan that they go over with sellers, because ultimately this is how you get a home sold in a shifting market, is making it look really good for that window of opportunity. Here's my question to you, Natascha. Hire a stager or do it yourself?
Well, so I am a believer in you hire professionals, right? We're professionals in our industry. I hope people employ us and don't try to do it themselves. And I feel the same way about other professionals. Now, if you're an agent who's also a stager because you have that skill set, fantastic. I'll caution that one. And I know we've discussed this in the past, Brett, and that's all about the emotion, right? We're hired as the person to be on their team to sell the property. we don't want to be seen as the person that delivers the negative news.
Yeah. You know, they expect us to fight for them. And when you bring in that professional consultant, they're in a position to deliver tough news where they're across the table instead of on the same side of the table with the seller. So it's really powerful that way. You know, I absolutely agree. I think having a professional stager is a must in a shifting market, but in reality, we live in a voyeur world with Instagram and Facebook, and everything's got to look good these days, or we just keep scrolling. And it's just how it is, right?
The second part of this is that impression.
Yeah. So, second thing, can I take the photos with my super fancy iPhone here? Do I actually need to hire a professional?
Please hire a professional. It's not just about the camera, because we know some of these phones have great lenses on them. It's about the angles. It's about the lighting. It's about knowing from which time of the day to take those photos. Yeah, hire a professional.
Yeah, and if you don't, the rest of the industry will probably make fun of you privately, because we all know what an iPhone photo looks like compared to a professional photo. And it all goes back to that.
In the mirrors.
Yeah, it all goes back to that first impression, that window of opportunity. Don't put the listing live unless you have this amazing presented property. Think of it like the Broadway play when they're pulling the curtain back and it's showtime. Put your best foot forward. You know, here's the thing is, staging makes all the difference in the world. And if you think about this, we're really in kind of this dual going on out there in the industry with a price war, one, which we talked about last week, but we're also playing a beauty contest. And you got to win both. You got to win the pricing game and you got to win the beauty contest. And by doing that, you got to stage it right. You got to make sure you're presenting it right with great photos and pricing it correctly as well. So I love that. There's not a lot to say outside of hire a professional, get a great stager, get a great photographer, make it look good. Don't be the one that gives the bad advice or the burden of negative news. Let somebody else do it.
Yep. And the only thing I would add to that is on the staging is make sure the property smells great, because buyers buy with their eyes and their senses.
Oh, wow. Perfect advice. All right. So here's 3 questions we think you should discuss this week. Question number 1 is, who are the best stagers in your area? And a second question to that is, who are the best photographers in your area? It's really important to have those vendors in your back pocket.
Number 2 would be, what's the value of hiring a professional versus DIY, like doing it yourself? Put a number to that.
Huge. And question number 3 is, how do you communicate or position the 3P2F formula to your sellers in listing presentations or your marketing? There you go.
Awesome.
Standing out from the competition. See you next week.